The moment I stopped selling what Wall Street wanted and what my financial advisor company wanted me to do, that's when my clients finally got results. And by the way, that's also what made me financially free too. And I'll tell you, that red pill moment, like in the Matrix, that's when I realized I could no longer keep teaching what financial advisors teach anymore. All right, so let me take you back. Like I mentioned, I was a financial advisor, right? This is over almost 25 years ago. Yes, I'm getting to be that old. But I was a financial advisor, did that for 4 years. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I drank the Kool-Aid. I was saving. I was being cheap just like my dad taught me to be, right? I was doing all these things to try to create financial freedom for myself. And I was meeting with clients and I was telling them, hey, if you just put your money in these mutual funds for the next 40 years, you're gonna be financially free. You're gonna be loving life. Well, eventually about 4 years in, my dad reached out to me. He said, Chris, when are you gonna advise me? Understand my dad was like the cheap penny pinching saver, right? This guy was doing everything like Dave Ramsey would tell you to do. He paid off his house in 18 years. He was stuffing money in his 401k, doing everything that every good boy and good girl should. However, as I looked at his finances, I said, Dad, I know you're 61 years old. If you want to retire today, you're gonna have to die in about 5 or 6 years because that's when you're gonna run out of money. All right, Chris, what do I do then? I don't know, you did everything right. Everything I teach as a financial advisor, that's it. This disturbed me because I was trying to give him answers, but I didn't have a good answer. The only thing I could tell him is, well, you got your house, but I wouldn't throw that in the stock market. Plus it's illegal to take out debt and put in the stock market. So I said, well, don't do that. I'm like, I don't know, maybe just keep working. So I was telling him, maybe just keep working in your 70s, which by the way, there were actually financial institutions telling you, even money managers telling you, you should work in your 70s and then retire for this very same reason that we're about to talk about here. A few weeks later, I call up one of my friends. Now I trained this friend to be a financial advisor. He was a guy that I trained to be on my team. But then months prior, he decided to leave and go do real estate investing. Well, as I'm talking to him and finding out, I said, well, how's life going, man? Like, how are you doing this real estate thing? And I'm expecting him to say, horrible, let me work for you again, Chris, that'd be good. He didn't say that. He said, Chris, my life is amazing. My dad and I have partnered on some real estate and we've actually doubled his income as a professor at the local university. I was like, come on, that's too good to be true. That's impossible. There's no way that's possible. He's like, Chris, we're doing it, whether you believe it or not, it's happening. And he finally just asked me, he's like, well, Chris, how many of your clients are financially free where they don't worry about money? Well, even the retired ones worry about running out of money too soon because they're afraid of outliving their money. Okay, Chris, good job. Well, how about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning from these people, but actually doing the investments you've been recommending? And understand, there were guys working in my office since really the 1970s. This is the mid-2000s, by the way. So it's 30 years prior. These guys have been working in the business for 30 years, and yet they couldn't retire themselves either. And I said, well, none. There's your problem, Chris. And this is where the big lie comes into place, right? This is where there's a trap here because the big lie is this, that if you just slave and save away, eventually you'll accumulate enough money to then be able to retire. But that's just not the truth. That's the thing is like, you're always talking about compounding interest and compounding it forever and all that kind of stuff. Nobody gives a crap about compounding interest if it doesn't lead to more income. That's what I was finding all the time is that people didn't really, what they really wanted at the end of the day is how do I have income always coming in? How do I make sure that my bills are always going to be paid for, right? And the unfortunate truth is that even in like Fidelity, you look at their stats, only about 2% of their clients, about 900,000 of their 46 million clients have at least $1 million. But remember that there's a 3% rule out there, not 4%. That was debunked years ago. 3% says you can only live on 3% a year if you don't want to run out of money. Well, guess what? That 3% of $1 million is only $30,000 a year, which is why of that 2%, 35% of them polled said it would take a miracle to be able to retire. They don't even think it's possible. And they have $1 million. They're like the few, the proud, the Marines. No, they're the few, the proud, the 2%, and they still don't have confidence. So a third of those guys even think they can't do it. That means 1% of people got a chance. Think about that. If you were to go on Google and you look at all the reviews and you see all these 1-star reviews, but then that 1 5-star review that's left for that restaurant because their mom went, or whatever it is, or there's their own review they left, right? But everybody else is 1 star. Would you eat at that restaurant? Of course not. You're not dumb. Well, if we have literally a 1 or 2% success rate with these mutual funds, why would we keep doing it? And this is the choice I had to make. I remember by March of 2006, I was like, a few months later, I was like, okay, either I can see the truth. I can see where the lies have been. I've been teaching these lies. Do I keep teaching it and just say, well, at least it's better than them doing nothing, even though they probably won't have any hope of retirement in the future? Or do I quit and I just go do something else? And so I quit. I said, I got to keep my integrity intact. I cannot teach something that I do not believe in. And so I left financial advising, vowing never to teach about money again. However, I know you're here right now. That didn't last long because I started doing real estate investing. I started focusing on passive income and accumulating compounding income rather than compounding interest. And what happened is by later that next year, when I was 28 years old, I was able to retire financially free. And it's not just me. Our clients have done it as well. For example, I had a client just 6 years ago. He came with only $250,000. That's all he had was $250,000. Now, I know for some of you that's a lot, but in the grand scheme of financial advising, that's not much. If you live on 3% of $250,000, you're living on $7,500 a year. That's like $600 a month. That's nothing, right? That's not enough, obviously. And so he's like, hey, I'm in my late 40s. I need to do something. So we actually started to do some things. We actually got him to buy properties, especially for him. He bought rental properties. And the next thing you know, guess what? He's now about $3,500, pushing on to $4,000 a month profit, passive income that's coming in. That's profit above and beyond his expenses, even with property managers that he's paying too. So he's about $4,000 a month. By the way, he only needs $5,000 a month. And I even showed him, I said, listen, if you sell off these two properties, get the equity out and go and reinvest that again, we can actually get you to $5,000 a month by next year. He could be just barely over 50 years old and be able to have over $5,000 a month, which is what he needs to be able to pay for all his bills and be financially independent. I had another woman, she came to us as well. She said, hey, I've got $600,000. I want to get to about $70,000 a year of passive income. Well, she did a bunch of different things, lent some of that money. She did some things called syndications where you pool your money with other investors to buy things like apartment buildings or self-storage units or whatnot. Between all the different things that she did, even some oil and gas investments, guess what? Later, as we just saw last year, this is only a few years later, she was now making over $70,000 a year. She is now financially free. She is financially independent. She is now work optional. She only works in her job because she wants to, not because she has to. And then the third client, same kind of thing. I met with him in 2018, so this is about 7 years ago. And he had some money. He even had some rentals. But we said, well, how can we do it better? Can we even invest in other things outside of rental properties? And so he started doing some things with lending. He started doing some things with syndications and whatnot and partnerships, and even some things with like raw land partnership that he's doing as well. And just so you know, guys, he just came to me last week. His goal was originally $6,000 a month. He's already surpassed that. Now he's going for the next goal. His next goal is $14,000 a month. $14,000 a month. You understand that that's living on about $170,000 a year. To do that in the stock market, you would have had to save up roughly, probably about $5 million to live on that $170,000 a year. He didn't have to save even close to that, but he was able to build up these assets and compound his income to the point where now he's making a lot more money. And by the way, just so you know, he came to me last year. He's like, I got an extra $50,000. What do I do with it? I said, if you put in your partnership, you'll make about an extra $1,000 a month, getting you to $14,000 a month right now. Now, with our clients, they used a really simple passive income calculator to estimate how much income they can actually generate per month. And then that's even in the next 12 months. So I want you to have the same access to that completely free to you. If you go to this link in our description below, you actually see that you can take this passive income calculator for free and spend about 3 or 5 minutes and find out how much passive income is possible in your situation in the next 12 months. Try that today.